call us back to order. Are we doing okay on the microphone front? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are to our action agenda B, and we've got several rules to be released for public comment. And first up is Ms. Hyatt with the proposed rules governing the Public School Choice Act of 2015.
Good afternoon. Mary Claire Hyatt with the department. Acts 988 and 1066 of 2017 and also Act 9 of 2018 made amended provisions of the Public School Choice Act of 2015 and made changes to these rules necessary. We're asking that they be released for public comment, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Are there any questions on this side? Okay. Dr. Moore, Ms. Zook, either of you? Okay. Then proper motion would be to move for release for public comment.
I move to release these to public comment.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Dean, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great. And you are up again with the rules governing student permanent records.
Act 936 of 2017 made some small changes to this rule. Larger changes were made to bring it kind of up to date because I don't think it had been updated since 1991. So as you can imagine, we needed to change some of the language and kind of make it more modern. So those changes have been made, and we're requesting that they be released for public comment.
Okay. Are there any questions? Ms. Oak, Dr. Moore, either of y'all? Any questions? Okay. I would entertain a motion to release these for public comment.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. McFettridge and second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hyde. Next up, also for public comment, Ms. Salas, Ms. Salas Ford. I'm sorry, I saw somebody else out of the corner of my eye.
That's okay.
And these are the educator licensure rules.
Yes, good afternoon. Courtney Salas Ford for the department. We are asking to release the ADE rules governing educator licensure. Amendments were made to add and implement the educator career continuum and make a few other technical corrections. And with the board's indulgence, Ms. Reinhardt and Ms. Abels would like to actually talk to you more about these changes and explain the continuum.
Great, thank you.
Cheryl Reinhardt and
Megan Abels, Public Information Manager.
and we just specifically wanted to come to you today because this is an exciting set of rules for us. And we went through a process of stakeholder input that was, I feel, just groundbreaking
Yes.
for Arkansas. And so we wanted to share that with you, and so I'm going to let Megan talk and kind of explain to you the group that we pulled together to work on these.
So this year we really decided to take our teacher leader advisory group to a whole new level, really utilize them, bring those teacher voices to the table. It's around 30 teachers from around the state that are regionally represented, level of what they teach, whether that's kindergarten through high school level. Some are coaches, facilitators. We do have a couple of principals on that group. And really, we started the group with the intention of saying, how can we bring teacher voices to the table? And then this went through the legislative session about the career continuum for teachers. Originally, this started out as something we called a tiered licensure system that we thought with the intention of we would move up a ladder, career ladder. After a lot of feedback from our teachers, really, they don't want a ladder to move up. They just want an opportunity to move up. And what that looks like and how they're utilized can be very different depending on their strengths and what they can bring to their district's needs. So I wanted you to know some of the main things they told us is they really wanted, so I'm a visual teacher, so here you are, you have your license. Instead of moving up a ladder, you either move up to a lead teacher or up to a master teacher, depending on what pathway fits your needs. I think we all know those strong curriculum-based educators that just know their content. They're true masters of their content. And maybe they don't want to necessarily lead other teachers, but they want to be able to show best strategies or mentor new teachers on best practices in the classroom, and they would then look towards that master teacher license. And then you have your lead teachers, those who are craving true leadership. And right now, their main option is to go out of the classroom and become an administrator. And I think Randy will attest to this in just a minute when she shares a story. I'm going to put you on the spot and let you share your story that you had in Washington about you speaking on that. We met with this group 3 times in person. We did a lot of email, a lot of discussion, a lot of feedback in between, but they were very clear about what they wanted in this continuum. I'm gonna save the most important one for last. They said they want this to elevate our profession. They want it to support a growth mindset. So maybe teachers who feel like they're already doing a lot, they're still gonna need to grow in order to achieve this license and then continue to grow once they have it. They want it to allow self-advocacy. So maybe they are in a district that the superintendent doesn't have a lot of knowledge base on how to utilize teacher leaders. So rather than them having to go and say, hey, how do I get this license? Can I do it? It's something they can choose to do on their own and then go to their superintendent and say, I'm going to get this license, and then I'm going to be able to show you how to better utilize me. They wanted it to be easy to understand, not too complicated, which I think all of you would agree. Sometimes we get things way too complicated. And then their most important thing is they wanted it to be equitable. They said districts who are already utilizing teacher leaders, their teachers are going to have no problem going out and getting this and it being embraced and used and maybe compensated in other ways. What about us teachers who are in districts that don't understand that? We want it to be equitable where we can get it to. We want it to be equitable cost efficiently. So originally, when we met with them, we had a big list of master's degrees and all of these programs. And then they kept saying, but is that really equitable for all teachers? And so we did a lot of thinking, and towards the end, we took their list and we tried to go through, and of course it had to be something that would be easy for their team to say, yes, that they can get this. It can't just be a huge portfolio book of things to look at. And in the end, I feel like we were able to say, could teachers in this area who maybe didn't go the route in a master's degree still be able to get a license like this? Could teachers who are already presenting nationally and writing and doing national things, could they still get this easily? Because we didn't want there to be a lot of barriers. So in the end, I feel like our teachers were very happy with the outcome. They felt like it was equitable, it met their requirements. They're excited about it, but I will be very transparent with you. The main thing they're nervous about moving forward is support from their building level leaders and their superintendents. And so we still have a lot of work to do on our end, on the inside, our internal team, with providing support to the districts on what those roles may look like. And again, we don't want to tell them these are the roles, right? Because we're trying to give districts more autonomy to do what's best for their kids, but we want to give them some guiding lists to look at that they can then fix it to the needs of their district. So that's kind of what happened. Overall, these teachers are very excited. And Dr. Owa's team has offered them a micro-credential in teacher leadership that will allow them to be one of the first groups of teachers to actually get this lead license certificate. So they're extremely excited, and we want them to go out and be the voice of this work and how it came about, and that teachers had input on it true input on it. Teachers designed this, and I think that's exciting. So I'll be quiet and let Cheryl talk.
You're gonna have questions later?
Oh, sure, question.
No,
Ms.
I
Harper,
don't think
anything
I could say any more than that. And I will say that it was really wonderful to work with those teacher leaders. They are an amazing group of people. They worked really hard. They worked long days on this stuff, and I appreciate them very, very much.
else? Great,
Happy to answer any questions.
great. Dr. Moore, any questions? Okay. Okay.
Okay, a couple of questions. Are we going to do it in such a way that it is objective, not subjective?
That's correct. This is all objective because there will either be working on a micro-credential, or it will be because the the Leadership Academy has a teacher leader program, so it'll either be a formal program. Everything is going to have a performance assessment associated with it, because the teachers were very insistent that there be some demonstration of the ability, involved. So everything that we've chosen that's included in here will be objective.
Okay, and secondly, would it be like paying a person who sponsors or a coach, or those people who get stipends for, in addition to what they, like, you get paid to be a person, and not to be a person, but to be a teacher, and then if you sponsor a club or you're a coach or whatever, you get a stipend for, like, the quote extracurricular activity. So this would be in addition to their responsibilities as a teacher. So is that sort of the notion?
That's part of the notion, but it will be up to the school district. They have the opportunity, because we put in the law that when we implement this, at the time we called it a tiered licensure system, but when we implemented this licensure system, that they can structure their pay schedules according to the level of licensure. So they can either do it as stipends, they can do it within as salary, they can, so they can create new positions. They can do it however they want to do it.
And I would encourage this kind of thinking because, and I can say this as someone who has postgraduate degrees, is that getting my master's or my postgraduate credentials or whatever didn't necessarily make me better at either teaching or mentoring or more effective or more valuable to my district. And I think if we can think in terms like businesses do, if I become more valuable to this district, then that should be considered when you do the paying.
Agreed. And each of these pathways into these licensure levels will require some evidence of, like, for example, the micro-credentials. They have to be rigorous. They have to be something that shows that they've learned it, they've used it in the classroom, and they can show a result. So everything is at that level. Everything has a tie to the classroom and to that teaching skill. So.
For those of you that have been through the Leadership Academy, the micro-credential is going to have teachers do that action research and then prove that what they researched and did and implemented had results. And it's the same concept, but it would be through an online platform. And another part of this, too, that's exciting is, I think, really bringing up the opportunity for more hybrid roles in Arkansas. I was at the Rural Ed Conference, and there was 2 superintendents there that they were extremely excited about this coming year, using teachers, whether that's 90-minute blocks or half-a-day blocks, and then go to support teachers the other part of the day, develop curriculum, do family engagement projects, whatever that is, the needs of the district. One of them, 3 teachers are going to actually be technology service providers who can go right in the teacher's classroom, co-teach with them how to implement a new technology in their instruction or help them with technology problems. So they don't have to hire more technology people. They can use the teachers that are good at that, pay them more money, or let them have leadership roles in another capacity. So I think the options are going to be wide and various, and how districts do this. I hope that some pay incentive will come, but I also hope that they know it's flexible to use hybrid roles as well.
Yeah, and I can see them, based on what we were talking about this morning, about helping students form student success plans. You know, that would be an area that would be very exciting to me, whereas someone else might go, no, I'd rather do, you know, whatever. So thank you for the time and energy you've spent on this.
So I've got a question somewhat related. So the two categories of lead and master teacher are not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? I mean,
No, they're not. Someone could have both if they wanted to.
okay.
Absolutely.
So you've totally
Right.
and I didn't know if that was totally clear from the
Okay.
just think of, if you could take a look at that and
Okay.
and be sure that that is clear, that a teacher could have multiple of these
I definitely will.
licenses.
And
at
we've
once.
had that question also. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's something we could probably clarify without it being
Yeah.
a problem.
Okay. Great. Ms. Dean, anything? Ms. Chambers?
I don't want to be party to every good idea results in more work. Because I'm so interested in the evidence that could come out of this that could be replicated. But I don't want to burden it with so much bureaucracy or rigor that it almost, you know, collapses under that weight. So I would ask that you think about how do we learn from this as it becomes more broadly realized. Where is it work? And I love the fact that there could be so many variations on a theme based on where the district, the school. But if you could think about how we might hear back,
Yes.
what's working maybe even better than we thought, what needs to be tuned up or adjusted. And if ever there's an opportunity to hear from the teachers or folks most closely impacted with this, that always makes it so much more real.
Well, I can answer that in 3 ways. First, the micro-credential that we're using is being provided by Teaching Matters, and it's with an agreement that they are able to conduct the research. So they will be conducting the research associated with that and the level of student achievement or student growth that comes from these teachers having gone through this learning process and also, you know, being a teacher leader in the school district. So that's one thing. Another thing is we intend to continue TLAG. TLAG is not over by any means, and so we will continue to obtain feedback from those teachers as well as anyone else we can snag into a survey. And third, it's already part of our strategic plan that we will find school districts who are using teacher leaders effectively, and we will highlight those. And so we will have a teacher leader webpage eventually that provides a lot of this information and provides videos and interviews and things like that from school districts to highlight those successful practices.
As we begin to see these teachers who become master teachers and lead teachers, I really want to reach out to them and use them to grow our teacher voice here in the agency. But also, again, as a communications, I want to go see what they're doing in their school and be able to feature what their work is. And then from the district level especially, I want superintendents to be able to speak on what that looked like for them to empower a teacher leader, use them, and then what good did it come from it? Because I think superintendents need to hear from other superintendents how this worked and it was really beneficial and what it did for student growth, maybe teacher growth, building capacity in your teachers. There's so many things that can come from it. But yes, I do have a plan to bring those teachers in, and I think Randy has some ideas too for some work she wants to do this year. So, and I think it'll all go together beautifully. So.
I'll just make one more quick comment, that we do want to emphasize that we do see this as a way of enhancing student growth because we are extending the reach of these excellent teachers. And that's what I'm so excited about, is that these teachers are going to reach more teachers who are going to reach more students, and I just want to make that comment.
Awesome. Ms. Newton?
First, I want to say thank you, because I know that there's it's how many hours that y'all have spent on this, and it shows. It's excellent work, and so, and more than that you listened, because this has come a long way from where you started. So thank you for listening to stakeholders, so I really appreciate that. I do have one comment, and it's under the Master Professional Educator License section. The documentation of one of the following And my question is, in the third section, because the way I'm understanding it, they only have to show one of these things, and one of them is a master's degree. And we know that not all master's degrees are created equally, and you just yourself said just a few minutes ago that you wanted teachers to show how they were using these ideas at a high level, you know, either through the micro-credentials, or we know what board-certified teachers have to go through to prove, and then the applications for Teacher of the Year and Presidential are you know, there's a lot of proof that goes in there. I'm not sure that the master's degree is at that level. And my other point on that is, one of the things when we thought about these different certifications for teachers is we wanted this to be an incentive for districts to differentiate their pay scales or salaries or compensation for teachers for doing these other things. And as far as I know, schools are already differentiating for a master's degree. If you get a master's degree, you get a higher level of pay. And so I'm not sure this does what we want it to do.
Go ahead, but I have.
We did a lot of research in this area because it was something we kept going back and forth upon. And the reason why it says master's degree in their content area is that's what research supports, is true growth in the classroom, is when a teacher gets their master's degree in their content area. And so we wanted to kind of respect what the research showed us. And that's kind of what we thought about a master teacher, is they're masters of their content. And so rather than going back to get a master's degree in order to move up the pay scale, go get one in the area that you're going to target specifically in, and then teach those teachers in your same area how to improve in their content knowledge.
So just any, okay, go ahead.
So, and if you'll notice on that, we also added, there's an and there. So it's not just getting the master's degree.
Okay.
If it's the master's degree that they choose, that pathway, they will still have to do the micro-credential, and that has the performance component to it.
Okay.
So, and we went back and forth a lot with the teacher group about, for example, Masters in Educational Leadership. Why would you not consider that? Well, because we know, that can be an all online degree.
Right.
You may or may not have a component where you show any student growth or any classroom application with your leadership skills. So that is, that's a component for every piece.
That word and took care of
yes,
my
ma'am.
questions. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Thank you.
Ms. McFetrich?
I want to say how excited I am about this. I love
We
your
are too.
passion.
You can tell
and
she's
your-
excited.
And excitement
I have
about it.
goosebumps right now.
We've gotten to see a little bit of this in Springdale, and they had teachers on special assignments through that federal
Yes.
grant money they
Yes.
received. And it's made a huge difference in that district. And I think anytime we can support our teachers and our staff, we're doing great things. So thank you very much.
We agree. And I just want to add one thing. The department is very fortunate to have Megan Abels.
Yes.
I'm not kidding. I mean, she has been such a, not just a cheerleader, but a really strong influence to have her teacher voice. I mean, I could stand up in front of a group of teachers and talk all day long. I'm not a teacher. But Megan has been a great benefit to this project, and she has been able to communicate very well.
She has the teacher's heart. Don't let her fool you.
I think a faculty sticker on the back of her too.
And Randy, I was hoping you would kind of tell them in Washington what they were talking about and what you were able to say.
Sure, why not? So I just got back from DC a couple weeks ago. I was there for the ECS policy, national policy meeting, and I attended a session about teacher leadership. It was something I felt interested in, and so it was a panel discussion about what other states are doing in their states to empower teachers, and they kept using the words share responsibility. But the only way they had a pathway for teachers to share responsibility was by stepping out of the classroom and becoming an administrator. And I have no desire to be an administrator. My heart is in my classroom. That's where I belong. But I've been given this beautiful voice this year, and I don't want it to just go away. And so I asked the question that, what can we do to keep teachers in the classroom, keep doing the good work, but still give them that leadership ability to help other teachers. They didn't really have an answer for me, but I feel like Arkansas is working on that answer, so I'm very excited about it.
And Randy served on the TLAG with us this year, so.
Could you describe the TLAG again? I've got a couple of new members, and talk about who serves on that.
Okay, well, I don't have the list with me, but TLAG is another acronym, but I kind of like it, is the Teacher Leader Advisory Group. And what that looks like back from the very beginning when I first stepped in this role is we'd always kind of had a TLAG group that we could call upon if needed. And these are teachers that cannot nominate themselves. They have to be recommended by someone in their district or community or a parent. And they don't really, most of the time, they don't even know they've been nominated for it or recommended for it. And so we took that information that was submitted, and we had a rubric. We sat down with Dr. Owa's team, and we took that and we made sure, not really all scores, but we really wanted it to be regionally represented. That was so important to us. And so we put them all up on the map, and we looked and we said, okay, we've got a second grade teacher, a high school teacher, we've got a principal, and our dots were everywhere. And they were all different colors based on makeup. And so that was important because teacher leadership looks different at different levels. You know, and that's Randy as a kindergarten teacher. You know, you don't just pull her out for one period, right? Like you could a high school teacher. So we wanted to make sure all the voices were at the table. And I just really have formed some strong relationships with these teachers. This year, they're emailing me, sending me stories, things that they're doing. They feel so empowered. And then thanks to the commissioner and Dr. Pfeffer, these teachers were able to go, some of them meet with the governor about a month ago and talk about teacher leadership and salary and insurance and some of those things. And these teachers, not all teachers get the opportunity to be Teacher of the Year or a Milken Educator. And it's unfortunate that it takes that kind of recognition to make you find your teacher voice. And so throughout this whole year, these teachers have emailed me and said, I feel more empowered than I ever have. And I feel like I'm heard and listened to and respected. And that's what we want. And that's why we're really excited about continuing this group, growing this group, and maybe down the road using this group in some way to be liaisons across the state to teachers. The sky's the limit with things we can do. But I do know in the big summit, education summit we have planned for 2019, we're working on a teacher leader pathway so teachers can come in and learn more about advocacy and teacher voice and this career pathway. And we just want them to really gain knowledge to take back and empower their other teachers. And I'll try to be quick, but yesterday I asked the superintendent, I said, why does the word empowering teachers scare so many people? And he said, Megan, I think it's because you have those teachers that use their voice to the negative. And he said, and that's why it sounds scary to administrators and superintendents. And I said, well, and that's a part of advocacy is learning. True advocacy is solutions and bringing ideas to the table to make things better. So we really want to train teachers on how to be more informed about what's going on in their state, but then how to use it to bring ideas to the table and advocate in a positive way. So I'm excited about all of this. If y'all have any questions, next time we meet with our TLAG group, I'd love for some of you to come, just shake hands, meet them, let them sit down and talk to you and ask questions, because they look at you and they're very, they are intimidated, but because they don't know you, but to be able to sit down at the table with you and hear your passion for education, that's a big thing, so.
Dr. Moore, did you have anything that you
I did. Mine were kind of detailed questions, but I really am excited about this and appreciate a lot of things that have already been answered. So 2 questions I didn't have. If I have a license and it's not time for renewal, but I wanted to add one of these areas, do I have to pay for that?
We will probably not be charging for that specific thing. In other words, and a lot of people I think will do it at the same time as renewal.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think we're going to be charging separately to add this as a separate charge.
Great, that's good news. I did have a specific question on the lead professional educator. It said you could take an assessment as part of the
yes.
What is that assessment? And how
We're
is that?
working with, that's a possibility. Okay. So the only one that we're aware of at this time is through ETS. And but the one that they have has not been developed for the public yet. So that'll have to come in the future, and when it does, we'll still need state board approval of that test and whatever's cut score is affiliated. But that is it's called the PATL, Performance Assessment for Teacher Leadership, something like that. And it is a portfolio assessment. It is a performance-based test.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Assessment.
Thank you all.
Great. Any additional comments or questions? All right, then, thank you all very,
Thank you for
very, very
indulging
much.
us.
Thank
Of
you
course.
for letting us share.
Yeah, thanks for your hard work. So it is time for a motion to release these rules for public comment.
I move to release for public comment.
Second.
All right, motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Great. And I do want to take this opportunity, especially for our new board members and Ms. House as well, that during the public comment period, it is certainly appropriate for board members to introduce their own public comments. And so that can be done in a variety of ways. Obviously, there are the forums that are online, but you can also email the appropriate attorneys, and they will get your public comments put into the mix and will be considered fully. So sometimes our conversation will activate some things that they know they need to look at. But if you have a thought later, please do take that opportunity to include your public comments. Okay.
Can you let us know when you're meeting? You
Yes,
said
ma'am.
you'd
Yes.
invite us? Okay, so you can invite us? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Great. Thank you. Okay, our last release for public comment are rules governing instructional materials, and Ms. Stedman is up.
Jennifer Dedman for the department. We're looking here at the ADE rules governing instructional materials, and if these look familiar to you, it is because you saw them back in February. At that time, the board had some concerns about section 4.03. In this iteration of the rules, you'll see that that language has been stricken. So the current set of rules implement the changes made by Act 929 of 2017, and they include the striking of section 4.03 that had the language concerning the state board. And I would ask that the state board release these for public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I have a question, but I was trying to get to that section before
No hurry.
okay.
Let me, Ms. Hook, I'll see, any questions over on this side? Okay. Ms. Hook, you ready?
I can try. I think it's 4.01.1.
Yes, ma'am.
It's about materials. In the past, we've said X number of books in the library and all of those kind of things. I think the question that I get most frequently in this regard from parents is, my child doesn't have a science book, or these books were done in 1998, or those kinds of things. Will this take care of those kinds of questions or things that, is it just a matter of the schools are not accurately communicating to the stakeholders and parents that we now teach standards, we use book as a backup, we may use, video as a backup, we may, different things like that. Is there some way that within these rules that those kinds of things will be monitored and we don't have X school district, maybe in a rural part of the state that isn't, Ms. Kaufman's coming up behind you, that are not keeping up-to-date materials for the students to use in the process of learning the material. Does that make sense? Yes.
That's all addressed in the standards for accreditation. And so that is something that will be monitored by our standards and support team.
Okay, thank you.
To your question about section 4.01.1, that is the section, it doesn't represent a change in the law. This one has previously existed. This does allow the state board at its option to require reports from districts on the use and distribution of instructional materials.
So will there be a time of year or when it comes up on the agenda, or will it be up to the commissioner and the chairman to put it on the agenda for us to have I know we don't want 262 superintendents walking through here, but will that be the way it's handled, or will it strictly be through the monitoring that standards and support?
Yeah, it would be through the monitoring process. And it would come to you if a deficiency is noted, it meets a certain threshold of becomes a probationary or some type of condition violation of standards is when that would come here. There won't be a annual review that the board will get on all of these materials.
Okay, I just am always concerned when I read in here, under the purview of the state board, under the purview, and we're going, well, it may be there, but we never get a report, or we don't know, or whatever. So I just wanted to be sure that we would have an opportunity to have this on the agenda should it need be. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I'll have to check, but the requirements for reports, where it says the State Board of Education shall report to the House Ed Committee, Senate Ed Committee, any school district out of compliance, you know, if those are the times where Deb's folks would be the ones creating those reports.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we do make that report as required to that group. And that report in the past has indicated that there were no exceptions related to instructional materials.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Okay. So motion here would be to approve.
Put out for,
No, this is, I'm sorry, this is public comment. I was one step ahead. Release for public comment of these rules.
so moved.
All right. Motion by Ms. Zook, second by Ms. Dean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are moving to final consideration. And these is the Code of Ethics, Ms. Salisford.
Yes, we are asking for final approval of the Code of Ethics for Arkansas educators. The state board approved these for public comment back in September. We ended up putting them out for a second public comment period because of substantive changes that were made. No substantive changes were made after the second public comment period, and so we're now seeking final approval. And if you have any questions about specific content, Ms. Reinhardt and Ms. Taylor are available.
Okay, great. I'll start over here. Ms. House, anything? Ms. McFetrich? Okay.
I just want to say thank you again. These are good. Thank you for listening.
Great. All right. Ms. Dean? Ms. Hook?
Yes, Ms. Reinhardt, would you go over again for the board members, or Ms. Taylor, one, the thing that was covered this morning about the change in the PLSB if you pull it off of the consent agenda, not to discuss but to pull?
Yes. So I believe I understand the question. Daryl Taylor, attorney for PLSB. Question has to do with if it comes onto the consent agenda, there is some concern, it'll then be moved to the action agenda. Is that the question?
I think we were told this morning that in the past we could sort of discuss it, but now it would purely be pulled and put on the following month's agenda.
Well, it had more to do with if there's going to be a change. So if there's some change to the sanction, then that is when it will be moved to the action agenda. If there's potential that the sanction could go up or down.
but it would be the following month, so we'd give the educator and the PLSB board time to relook at it, because the way it is now, the educator wasn't present, and we might,
If there's a change.
right,
Right, that is what's operative, because essentially, the educator is always advised that this is a recommendation. They receive a copy of the recommendation. It is only final once you guys have approved it, and they do understand that. Well, we tell them that, regardless of what they understand or not, but we do advise them that this is not final until there's a state board order. However, oftentimes, we do give them also the option to accept or reject it. And so, because there is sometimes the acceptance, and that comes along with some expectation that this is sort of a done deal, we want to ensure that they understand that if you guys do make some sort of change, they have the opportunity. Once again, it has to do with due process and the opportunity to be heard. Because if there is some potential change, we want to give them an opportunity to give any sort of clarifying information that may be pertinent.
so it wouldn't be pulled from consent and put on today's
No, ma'am.
action agenda. It'll be pulled from consent and put on the following month's action agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And at that point, just to clarify further, if I may, just to be sure that you guys have a full understanding of what is intended in these rules, if there is some change that is desired as it relates to the board members, it would be sort of an abbreviated hearing. And so it would not go through the process of witnesses and so forth, but you would get the transcript of the actual hearing that did occur at the PLSB level, where you would have opportunity to review the witnesses' testimonies. You'd see all of the documents that were put forth, but you would not hear new testimony. Essentially, you would hear what we call oral argument. So each side would have 10 minutes to point out what they feel the salient points are and to help to clarify anything if there were questions. And so we felt that was a major change, so we wanted to be sure that you understood how that could potentially impact you. And one of the things, the reason we did that, do you want me to keep going into? Okay. And one of the reasons that we specifically did that, because the potential concern was when it's initially on the consent agenda, and oftentimes there have been some concerns about the level of the sanction. And at that point, if it is sent back to PLSB without any new evidence, there is no basis for a change for PLSB. And that subjects us potentially to judicial review that could result in some sort of overturn of that decision, because essentially there is no new evidence, and it would look as if it's an arbitrary change. And so that is why I really wanted you guys to understand why we were doing that.
Thank you very much, Ms.
All right.
Are there any other questions about this issue or any other changes in the Code of Ethics? Okay. Then the request is for these to be made final, and so I'd invite a motion to that effect.
I move to make these proposed rules final.
Second?
Okay. Motion by Ms. Dean, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you all very, very much. Okay. And then finally, as you remember from this morning, we do have a new agenda item, and this is the additional repeal of an old rule.
Yes, and so Courtney Salas Ford for the department. For those of you who were not here last month, Act 781 of 2017 was issued to every state agency to go through all of our rules that exist and identify any that are outdated or no longer necessary, and to submit those to a legislative subcommittee who could then repeal them without going through the full promulgation process. And so last month, the department provided a list to the board members of all the rules that we identified as could be repealed. We, upon further review, discovered that there was a rule left off of that list, and so we are asking your approval to add that for consideration for repeal, and that is the rules governing graduation and dropout rate. And so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And so what you're doing when you approve the addition is not the actual repeal, but that it can be submitted to the legislative committee, who will then decide if it can be repealed.
All right. Any questions on this? All right. Then I would invite a motion to submit this rule for potential repeal.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Dean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
All right. Next up is new business, which is obviously a new category on our agenda. And Ms. Hyatt and I have talked a bit about what does this mean? What is new business? And I think it, in short, would probably take one of three forms. One would be any addition to the agenda that had come to light during the meeting. That would require a two-thirds motion, a two-thirds vote to do that. And as Ms. Hyatt has reminded me and reminded folks this morning, you know, if the public was not informed, there would be probably a hesitancy to do that in most cases, but occasionally there would be something that would be, for instance, a new rule that was ready to go out for public comment where the public was going to get plenty of opportunity to have an input, but it was time sensitive in some way. So that would be one category of things that might be new business. The second thing that might be new business would be issues that had arisen as a result of our discussions during the day that we needed to put on our agenda, and I put that not in a literal sense, but in a broad sense, that's something we need to begin to grapple with as a board. And that could take lots of different forms. It could be a work session, it could be a task force, et cetera. The third thing that I think would come in the area of new business would be those reports on visits we've had to schools or co-ops, or things that don't have another kind of place on the agenda, but are, this seems to be the best place to put them. Ms. Hyatt, does that sound like a pretty good review? Okay, good. So, with that in mind, I'll just start with Ms. Dean and see if you have any new business.
I do have some new business. It was a pleasure for me to be a judge for the Noble Impact Innovation Challenge that happened on June 21st. I got an invitation from Kim Wright, who is over the family engagement section of the department. And basically it was several groups of teachers, administrators, people in the community leaders that came together, formed groups. They had not known each other before. They formed, I think it was 5 groups, and they came up with new and innovative ideas to engage families and communities. And there were 3 of us that were judges, and it was absolutely awesome, the ideas that were brought to the table. It was a hard decision to make, to make a decision for a winner, but the group that won, I don't remember the name of them, but they were a group of, all happened to be from the Delta area. And they had really good ideas about bringing family members to meetings, making it as easy as possible for them to be engaged in teacher meetings, just community meetings, and going out into the community and getting them, bringing them in, or having meetings outside of the school building where people felt more comfortable meeting and not necessarily having to come to the school buildings. So that was a great opportunity for me, and met a lot of great people from all over the state. And I think they were a group that was pulled from our initial family engagement
I'll speak on Kim's behalf.
Thank you.
We provided a list of names from our external stakeholder group for our family engagement work, but they also had names provided through some other organizations as well, yes.
All right. But it was a great opportunity to have people from all over the state come together and give us some really new and innovative ideas about how to get more families and community engaged.
Perfect.
Enjoyed it.
Great. Ms. Chambers, anything? Ms. Newton, anything? Ms. Petrich? We'll hear your report in just a bit. Dr. Moore? Okay. Ms.
Okay, is this when I first came on the board during reports day, after the chairman and the commissioner gave theirs, this was when we shared that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So are we moving
We're
it?
kind of moving it to this
So this
spot.
isn't action related, it's just,
It's possible that it could lead to some action at a later date, but it really is that opportunity to share those things, those observations
Okay.
about education in the last month.
okay. The thing in particular that I wanted to highlight this month was a program called Champions for Health. And it's an effort on the part of the Heart Hospital. And Sue Owens, who used to be over Economics Arkansas, has chosen Morrilton Middle School. And they will be working with the students on learning healthy eating and lifestyle. It will be informing them so that if they choose to, they can lead a more healthy lifestyle, which would help cut down on Arkansas's position as being an overweight, for children being overweight. But anyway, they're really excited about it. The kids are really excited about it, and it's summertime. So anyway, if you have, I have a brochure here if anybody would like to look at it, or you can, and contact information for Miss Owens if she chose to, if you want to know more information or how other districts might get involved.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else in the form of new business, are there any other public comments? Okay. So we have no other public comments. And so I would entertain a motion to adjourn our business meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All right. Motion by Ms. Chambers, second by Ms. Dean. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. And we are going to take a 5-minute break. So Sharon can collect her microphones, and we'll come back at 2 o'clock and finish with our reports.
Take the chance to go to
This is something.
action today. Obviously, reports will, for new board members, will typically take place on Friday and will typically be more expansive, but we've got just a handful of reports today, but an important one to kick off, and that is Ms. House's first Teacher of the Year report.
Randy House, Teacher of the Year. I typed it out just because I knew better than to come up here and just look you in the face and try and talk. So I just want to take an opportunity to express how honored I am to get to sit on this board and to serve as the Arkansas Teacher of the Year. It is very rare for teachers to have a seat at that table, and I'm very honored to get it. One of my goals this year is to get inside as many schools as I can to see firsthand what's going on around the state in classrooms. A few months ago, I was preparing to head to Washington, D.C. along with my fellow Teachers of the Year from around the nation. I knew I would be meeting with legislators and Secretary DeVos, and during my time there, I decided I wanted to bring something along with me, something that represented education in our state. So I put a call out to educators around Arkansas to share photos of their classrooms with me. I received an overwhelming response, hundreds and hundreds of photos poured into my email and my social media accounts. I was absolutely blown away with how eagerly teachers were opening their doors to me and sharing their students' stories. I gathered these photos and I put them into books to take with me on my journeys. I wanted to be able to share those student stories with anybody who would talk with me. During my time in D.C., I gave a book to each representative I met, as well as Secretary DeVos. And in fact, the other state teachers of the year followed my lead and created their own versions of their state books. And by the time we landed in D.C., dozens of books were presented at the Department of Ed in D.C. So from that experience, I've made connections with teachers and discovered schools that I cannot wait to get into and see firsthand. And first on my list is a teacher by the name of David Ward. He teaches in the elementary alternative learning classroom in the Cedar Ridge School District in Newark. He sent me photos of his students, and I was immediately enthralled with what he was doing with his students in his alternative learning classroom. His students were building an aquaponics system that helped raise greens, completing math in a cemetery using date of death and date of birth and graphing, and discussing historical events based on when people lived and died. His students raised a mealworm farm to feed their pet bearded dragon, and they hand-built a gravity car. Again, these are kids attending an alternative learning classroom, using tools, working together to complete real-life projects, and I cannot wait to see it firsthand. So today I brought you copies of the books that I brought with me to DC of what education looks like in Arkansas. It's really became a beautiful thing for me to connect with teachers around the state, and became very evident that this was one of my goals for the year. So I hope you enjoy peeking into the classrooms as much as I did. And as I journey into the classrooms, I would love for you to join me if you're interested, or if you know of somewhere I should visit. Please send me an email. You can follow me on Twitter or Facebook. And I just really look forward to our year together.
Great. We look forward to working with you. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Thank you for our books.
I think it was a terrific idea because many of adults went to straight seat classrooms with the teacher in the front and chalkboards, and I don't even know if they have chalkboards in classrooms anymore. So I think it was a terrific idea, a visual.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also think that that's a myth. That's what classrooms now look like, and I love this, being able to get a picture into the different classrooms, and I wish we had a place that I could see more. You know, I don't know if there's a way that we could get a website where teachers could post. You know, I know you have to get into privacy issues with students, but I would love to see more of these, and I think it could do nothing but elevate the teaching profession, you know, if we could see more of what kids were doing in Arkansas in classrooms, because they're doing some awesome things.
They really are.
Great job.
Great. Thank you. All right. My report The commissioner and Dr. Pfeffer and I got together and visited last week, kind of about the year ahead. And some of you will be being reached out to probably by the commissioner in terms of some potential tasks that to see if you will take them on. I did want to highlight a few things that had come up last month as we thought about kind of things to do that we wanted to focus some energy on this year. We talked about the need to better connect with our our economic development operation in the state. And so that's one thing that we're going to work on, is creating a linkage between this board and the work of AEDC. And so that is one thing that you'll be hearing more on. Also, Ms. Chambers' request for us to begin thinking about charter education and at what point is a community the needs for charter education have kind of been met by the existing number of schools. I think your focus was, of course, on the Little Rock area, but it's also an issue in Northwest Arkansas and in Jefferson County as well. I think we will maybe wait on that just a little bit. We are waiting a report from IFF, and I said we weren't going to speak in acronyms today, but I can't remember what IFF stands for.
Illinois Facilities Fund.
Right.
That's the former name, but now they go by IFF. Yeah.
Okay, so we're speaking in acronyms because it's an acronym. They are finally at a point where they can give some, they have done some analysis of that issue in Pulaski County. They will be giving their report in the coming few weeks. And so I think what makes the most sense there is to kind of hear that report. And we will probably get some version of it at this board meeting. It'll be to a different group. But we'll get that, and then that will allow us, I think, to begin to think, okay, how do we need to grapple with this, both in the Little Rock area, but then more broadly in the state. So that is still very much on the list. Next month, we will expect to get a final report from the Discipline Task Force. That's Dr. Hill is not here this month. That needed to wait until next month. I think at that point, we will get some recommendations, and it may lead to some future actions or additional new tasks for this board. I do think that will be a time to also think about Ms. Rice's recommendation regarding mental health and what we need to do in terms of work on mental health issues. We also know that school safety task force is also doing work, and mental health has come up a lot in that work. So that's also still kind of bubbling on the agenda. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that's kind of where we were headed. I think one thing that we do need to begin to think about, we don't need to make final decisions today, but for new board members, over the last few years, the board has taken at least one road trip each year. We have gone to Helena, West Helena, Pulaski County, Dermont, El Dorado last year. I think we need to think about what makes the most strategic sense in terms of road trips this year, because it takes a while for those to get planned, figuring out what month makes the most sense, et cetera. So I would invite thoughts of where might make good sense for us to focus some energy. I think I overheard earlier some suggestions that Ms. Newton, I think you.
I suggest Jefferson County, that not just maybe one district. I don't know how we would manage it, but I know with Dollarway under state control, and then just the county, I think that would be a place that needs to know that we care.
Okay, good. Do folks have any other ideas?
That's the place I was thinking.
Okay. Okay, Steve?
I would suggest at some point we look at western Arkansas. That is an area that gets very little attention. Waldron, Mount Ida, places like that over in that area. And if you look, there are needs, but because they aren't on our radar with respect to the typical issues of distress, maybe we don't really. They just don't come up in our conversations. But there's a lot of good things going on over there, and some partnerships that I think would be valuable for us to consider, maybe going over to that part of the state.
And there are some distinctive challenges with broadband and some of
Yes.
those areas and some other issues that might, I think, be particularly pertinent as well.
Correct.
Ms. Chambers?
If there's any other vehicle available to us where there's a school that's particularly proud of something that they've innovated, something that they've done.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. If there's, I don't know how best to identify, or to allow schools to self-identify that might want us. Hopefully there would be those, but that have something specific that they've done, where they've innovated, they've done something different, where we could go see that. Would love to have that connection available to them if they'd like us to come visit.
And I do think that the forward communities too are
Yeah,
moving
exactly.
into a period where I think they may be ready to show off some of those lessons learned as well. So that may be another area as we kind of move forward with that work. Okay. Well, this gets the conversation started. Obviously, add to the list, but we know even if we're going to, no matter how many we're going to do, we need to figure out what month, and then that leads to a lot of other decisions about what day do we go and et cetera. So I just want to get the conversation started. I think that's all I have at this point. So I'll turn it over to the Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my report has two topics today. We have some guests that are with us. We will get to them in a moment. First thing in this part will be brief, but as you all know, the ACT Aspire results have been released, preliminary results. We are opening up the corrections window at the end of July, end of this month, and it'll go into August, at which point districts will have the opportunity to review their data and submit corrections. So there are some changes that that we need to go over as a board so that you are equipped to be able to answer questions that do arise that you may already be getting. So in that vein, we would propose either through a report or a work session in August for our assessment unit to have some things ready to go over with you. The changes, we've already talked a little bit about the changes in the cut scores and how that has had a ripple effect. So there may be other things that as we dig in that you will need to be made aware of. So does that kind of summarize our conversation this week?
Yes, I think that would be helpful, but in addition to things this board would need to know, I think the general public needs to hear. And so if we do a work session in like the evening of the Thursday board meeting in August, then is it possible for us to live stream the reports when we're getting the reports before the board so that anyone who chooses to can do the live stream or at least go back on the archives and live stream it at some point later? Because as we more and more involve stakeholders, we need the stakeholders to realize that they, as well as the school on the ground people, are the ones that can rise all the children, and as opposed to it's just the teacher, it's just the principal, but it's everyone working together. Because, when schools were or more successful than maybe they are currently, it's back when schools were responsible for teaching reading and math and those subjects, but they weren't expected to to work and think in terms of whole child and wraparound service, and the more things that the schools are asked to do, the more people within the community that we need to get helping us, because it's going to take all of us together. And so I think in that light, and because of the transparency, so we can have everyone to hear what we hear and understand that we are happy or not happy, or we're glad or whatever, but we want to work and be as transparent as we possibly can, because over the years of my educational experience, which has been quite some time, the week and month that the test score came out was probably the most stressful, because they weren't as much as we had hoped for, or they were good in some areas and not in others, and people felt defensive. So I think we need to realize that we want all kids to do well, and that we are here to be transparent and help people understand that. So I know we typically don't live stream the Friday meeting, but if that's when we're going to get a follow-up report when the whole team is here, then I think that we, if possible, should live stream that meeting.
It is possible. It's just a matter of logistics. And I mean, it's obviously the system is in here. So as opposed to some of the other work sessions we've had.
Well, not necessarily the work session. I was meaning we have the work session for our questions and then get a report from the team.
I see. Okay.
Is what I'm talking about. Because
Okay.
knowing how to norm reference, knowing how norm referencing is done when a test isn't given in every state, you know, there's a lot of things that come into play in understanding a test, and we don't want our explanation to sound like we're explaining it away. We don't want our explanation to sound like we're making excuses. We want our explanation to be in an effort to inform and work together, not make excuses or turn our head the other way.
Right. And we can make that happen. You know, it's I guess the process of maybe a report and then giving you all time to develop the questions, because you'll have some immediate questions, but it's very likely that after you've had time to process, you will have deeper questions. So we may be talking about a multi-step process, possibly.
I don't know. I don't want to delay too long, because the
Yeah.
scores are out there.
Yeah.
And the parents will be getting those given to them at the beginning of the school year. Is that when will the parents get their individual child's scores?
I'm not sure. The assessment team probably would know that. I don't know that we have anybody here that can give a firm answer. Deb, you gonna try?
I believe that school districts do that differently. Some school districts provide those reports early on at the beginning of the school year. Some of them do it at parent-teacher conference. So I think it depends on each school district, how their plans for providing that information.
I do remember one school district last year, we got a report that they had not released it district-wide. Some schools had received theirs, others had not, and that was creating some angst. So now that you mention that, I do recall that, but we don't give any guidance or directives on when they need to release those.
Other than they just should provide those.
Well, then
Yeah.
maybe each board member could, if they have things or questions that come to mind, give those to the people who are going to, like, give us our training or our work session, and then live stream. I really would prefer, if at all possible, to not delay until September.
We agree. Okay. We will follow up with all of you on the types of questions you may have or what points you want covered in that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so then the next phase of my report, I want to introduce Pam Dean. And Pam brought some of her team members, but Pam is the principal at Park Avenue Elementary in Stuttgart. Dr. Pfeffer and I visited their school last school year and just were blown away with the wonderful things we saw happening. And then in conversation after we started releasing our upgrades to My School Info, Megan told me a story of some work that they did in digging when we were wondering how schools are using My School Info. Megan said that Ms. Dean had some aha moments of her own, and when she conveyed that to me, I said, I want to find a way to get her to come in and tell that story to the state board. So this is a lot of things you'll hear coming together in this story. And at this point, with your permission, I'd just like to turn it over to Ms. Dean.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us. I have with me Denise Houghton. She's our literacy director for our school, and also Miss Kelly Clawwater. She's our math and science coach. I would also have our media specialist, Tia Bricky, but she had babysitting she had to do. And I would also have our counselor with me, but she is at the beach on vacation. So just very, I'm probably going to say this word a lot, excited. We've been on a journey, and without further ado, I've kind of divided this up because as a principal, one person can't do it, just like what y'all have been saying. Everything aligns perfectly. It's kind of crazy how things have been coming together, especially for me. And I'm going to turn it over to Miss Denise.
I'm just going to kind of introduce our journey. We definitely have been on a journey, and we're so excited to be here today to share that journey. I know earlier as you were talking about a teacher having a voice, it is so true. When you find that voice and you find that passion that you have for kids, that is something that you want to always embrace, and I feel like that we've done that. This journey has been, there's been many valley moments, and there's been many mountaintop moments, and we're not through with the journey. But I just wanted to kind of tell you about how it all began. The three of us were able to attend a Solution Tree event in Kentucky, and when we were there, we returned with a renewed passion about how we want our kids to achieve. We embrace that all means all, that it is not okay when we have a certain percent that is not achieving. That is not okay. And our motto is all means all, and we're going to do whatever it takes so that we touch all children, because we want them to achieve. And so that's kind of where our journey has taken us. And so when we returned, we were so passionate about what we had experienced at Solution Tree that we shared that with anyone who would listen. And we were able to share that with our district. And those people at the district they embraced that also. And we have now been so fortunate to be part of some Solution Tree services for our district in the area of school culture. And that is really where our journey began. And so Pam's going to tell you more about that. But we are just so excited to be here and share our passion that we have for kids.
Okay, so hang on. I've got my pencil so I can mark off. Okay, so it all started, we received our reports from ESSA and our school culture audit with Solution Tree. Alarms started going off. We were taking what we had learned on our journey. We realized that we could do better and were devoted to all means all. So we began to understand the discrepancy between our black and white students and the lack of growth of our English language learners. Before it was just a number, but now it was more than that. I began by analyzing student discipline by using My School Info and eSchool. I looked at the past 2 years of discipline data and created a chart and started to ask myself questions. So over those past 2 years, 23 of those students had the majority of the discipline referrals. Of those 23 students, 19 of those live with a single parent, 1 lived with a grandparent, 1 lived with their aunt, 1 lives with a mother who was newly, his mother had just also gotten married, so he had stepdad, and they were doubled up with a grandparent. Only 1 child lived with both parents. So that was very eye-opening for me of those 23 students. 9 of those students had been retained. For the literacy, their overall reading level, their tiers, 17 of those 23 were in the lowest tier. 2 of those students received special education services. 5 of those received outside counseling services. And 11 of those students, which surprised me, missed 6 or more days of school. So I had never done that before. I just got the data, looked at a number, and just kind of, well, what can we do? So starting by digging deeper, I got, again, you're going to hear this word, excited. So I was talking to my counselor who is not here, and this year we're actually fortunate enough to have an additional counselor who works, she worked with our 3rd and 4th grade students. So and she's also one of my former students. So I was excited and telling her, sharing my findings with her. So then she goes back and starts analyzing data. And she, again, just worked with our 3rd and 4th grade students. So she compared the groups, she looked at the discipline data from the students that she had been working with, the groups for this year, or supports that those students were given. So for 4th grade, of those group of students, there was a 52% decrease in their discipline referrals. For 3rd grade, a 49% decrease. And then 2nd grade was 23%. 1st grade was 21, but remember I just said 3rd and 4th, so the younger kids didn't have the same opportunities. So some of these opportunities, so then she charted that information. So we took those kids and we said, okay, what did we do for those kids? So those kids, some of them had services through the Point is offered in our school, counseling groups with her. We have community mentors that come in with some of our students. We have a 9th grade academy mentoring program where older students come in and mentor. We have just started Cubs Kids. I think we have maybe 2 or 3 students involved in Cubs Kids, and we also had some of those students on our student leadership team. And just to share a story of one of those students, a 4th grade student this year, he was a frequent flyer. I saw him all the time in the office, that's what we call him. But that student, and again, I just looked at the 2 years, but he was someone I knew well. He had the 16-17 school year, 11 discipline referrals. This past year, with all the work, 2 discipline referrals. And that was at the beginning of the year, so that was really before we got rolling with all the different services. So with that, schools, we have to create an action or a school improvement plan. So part of our school improvement plan is school culture. So just some of the changes that came about from digging in deep with that data will be some of these. So we're going to change the duties of our counselor to free up more of their time. A lot of the time for counselors, I don't know about other districts, but ours is testing. So I'm going to take some of that away from them. Additional services such as banana split and single parent counseling for students. Our counselors will do that. Additional services and assigned mentor for those 23 kiddos I talked to you about. When we actually went to RTI conference, and what we realized was we're not ready for RTI. We got to back up and get our culture and professional learning communities right. So, but we came back, and we're going to conduct a book study with our leadership team and our task forces. One of our task forces is going to do a book study with culturally responsive teaching in the brain by, I think it's Zaretta Hammond. And that was actually recommended by Courtney Cochran, who came and spoke with our school the end of May last year. And I'm also participating in the micro credential with the Arkansas Department of Education with Sandra Hurst with the culturally responsive leader. So I'll be participating in that. And also, as far as our English language learners, we're going to provide more targeted interventions by utilizing our ELPA 21 data, familiarize ourselves and students with the format of the test. There were some things that I found out, like before they took the test, it was like the day before, maybe they just kind of became familiar, did a practice test, and we can do better than that. So that they can familiarize themselves with that. Summer school support, during our summer school, the month of June, we had our EL, English language interventionist there, and invited those students to come to summer school as well. And just making our staff and us becoming more aware of being culturally responsive, because before Solution Tree, well, for me, again, it's all aligning because I'm in Leadership Academy, micro-credential, different things about being culturally responsive. But one step I took in becoming culturally responsive was actually reading the book I told you about with the Zaretta Hammond. And when I attended the Culturally Responsive Leader micro-credential, just the introduction of, whether you wanted to continue and do the micro-credential, which I will be, she asked a question about our EL students. Just, do you know who those students are? And I thought, uh-oh. I know, but I didn't know where they came from, how many. So now, alarms start going off again. I go back. This is just how I am. I go back to Stuttgart or Park Avenue. And now I know I have 21 students from Mexico, 7 from Palestine, 3 from Guatemala, 3 from Honduras, 2 students from Yemen, 1 from Marshallese Island, and 1 student from India. And then, where I may need some help, and I hear it, maybe you, is that I began to Google, which is the only thing I really know to do right now, about their cultures, and so that we can make those students feel safe within our school. So anyway, with that excitement I was sharing, Megan and I go back to college. So anyway, I called Megan, all excited, sharing the story that I'm standing here before you telling. And at Arkansas Leadership Academy, there's a critical friend. So that's the terminology we use when you're fixing to hear something that you need to do. So she said, Pam, that all sounds great. And, she's a cheerleader too. She said, that's so awesome. That all sounds great. But I didn't hear you say anything about your parents. So I went, oh. And so then I'm going to turn it over to Miss Kelly.
All right, so that's where our next step started. We knew that we had to continue to build the collaborative culture with our parents. And just being honest, I don't know that everyone in our community values or understands the impact that parents have on their students' achievement. I don't know that we're there yet. But Megan helped us organize a meeting with our parents, and in true Pam Dean Park Avenue fashion, within 2 weeks we had parents in front of us to meet with. So those kind of parents were well represented. We had students and, we had parents of students who we knew very well. We had met them often. We had parents that we had only seen maybe at award ceremonies. We had parents that we were sitting down talking with who were also community members and business owners. And then something that we had never done before is we also were sitting down with parents who wanted to have a voice and needed a translator. So we got to talk with our Hispanic community also. The topics that we really wanted to talk about were attendance. What was happening with the students who were missing 6 or more days. How can we improve two-way communication, because we are great at one-way communication. But how can we find out from you what we really need to do? And then how can our school become better for your child, not just for a subgroup, but for your actual student? And what we found is they had great ideas that were very easy to implement, some that we could go back tomorrow, back to our school and implement and share with teachers and staff. And most of them were cost effective. They were free. What happens when a parent has a voice? So I think the most beneficial thing that we came back with was that we had this group of parents that we weren't sure what was going to happen, but it started out very nervous, and they gave us just the answers we wanted to hear. And by the end of the meeting, they were relaxed, and we were visiting, and they were kind of humorously telling us things that we needed to hear. It was very honest and real conversation. So when we went back as a team and we shared with the counselor and the media specialist and us, what we realized was that our parents want to have a voice. And you read that in textbooks and you hear that all the time, but we're not sure, you know, that we even allow them that. And as is now, because we mean all means all, that it is our responsibility to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for our parents to have the voice, not just data with a, you know, so I think that's what they're looking for, and that's what, you know, our responsibility is going to be.
I think that may fall off. Okay, so I am hopeful about the ESSA and the changes that are coming to Arkansas, and which, by the way, I was able to attend Culture Keepers with Dr. Owa and Miss Tina Smith, and Culture Keepers was in Atlanta. It was for administrators, and Dr. Anthony Muhammad recognized Arkansas, had our flag there in front of everyone, and recognized Arkansas leading the way in education. But as a building level principal for the past 5 years, I'm especially excited about the support that we're beginning to receive. Again, I am involved in Leadership Quest with Rocky Malone, and I don't know how often you all speak with her, but Rocky is awesome. I have been around administrators, also in the Leadership Academy, so I'm around different people in the Arkansas Elementary Principals Association. So I'm around different principals from different parts of the state, and all wonderful things to say about her. And I could call Rocky right now, and I know that she would come to help support and whatever that I needed. So the Leadership Quest, that's, I wish more people would take advantage of that, or more administrators would. Arkansas Leadership Academy, and I'm very excited about the micro-credential with Sandra Hurst. And also encouraged and excited, again, I said I was on the board for elementary school principals. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are 700 new administrators with 3 years or less experience. And I'm excited about the changes and the impact that we can make together on the students of Arkansas, but we cannot do it without the Arkansas Department of Education. And that we thank you for your support and are enthusiastic about the direction that our state is moving in, especially in the area of education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner?
Yeah, so Ms. Dean, talk about, your leadership team is on it. Talk about the challenges, if you've run into any, because one of the hardest things to do is when you realize, hey, we can do better, but helping others understand that it's everyone needs to do better. It's all of us, and which is what we tried to model, from the department. It's not just, hey, you need to do better at the schools. Yeah. We need to do better at the department. Talk about that part of your journey.
Yeah. So, to me, I always say, well, I always front things with you. Do you want me to be honest? I don't think that's a good thing, but anyway, maybe I feel like that makes people feel better. Ma'am?
I think that's a wonderful thing.
But I tried to be very honest with my staff, and so when we went to the solution tree, again, it was RTI, response to intervention, we realized we're not there. We've got some work to do that we, within our school, as far as culture and professional learning communities. And so it's just how our team came back, and the van ride home, we learned more about guiding leadership team, or a guiding coalition, and collective commitment. So just kind of teaching ourselves, and I'm going to say this, and you're probably so tired of hearing me say this, but okay, I have applied for the professional learning community grant twice, okay, and I've not gotten it. But I want to say this, and I haven't, again, I'll admit it. So after going to Culture Keepers, I've still got work to do in my culture before we can move forward. We are moving forward, but we still have that work to do with our culture. So I do believe things happen for a reason. So, but our leadership team, you want to go?
Well, I was just wondering, but I think one of the most powerful things we did with part of our staff was going through finding our why. Yes. Why do we exist as an establishment? You know, many people will say, well, that's an easy one. We exist to educate kids. No, that's what we do. Why do we exist? And so that was hard, and we used some assignments and work and really having some honest conversations about what we've done in the past that has not worked, and that is why we are where we are, which is not where we want to be, and just realizing that we have to do better. We have to be passionate, we have to inspire others, but we can't do that until we know our why. And I think I can say now, we know our why.
I can tell you, to inspire students to be their personal best. I can tell you exactly what it is, but that's a really good, Simon saying it was awesome that, I don't know if you've seen the TED Talk, but it's the 3 circles of how a business operates.
Back to Mike.
Oh, sorry. But it's the 3 golden circles, and that most businesses operate from the outside in. And then they give the example of Apple. Why they're so successful is because they operate from the inside out. They know their why first.
And so I feel like we did a lot of work with our guiding coalition first. So because in the past we have tried new initiatives that have failed. So if we could go ahead and start changing the mindset of a select group of people who are easy to change their mind, so our guiding coalition, there's maybe 18 of us. And then they spread out, and that's how we're able to reach those resistant staff members. And we've had a lot of professional development on the different types of staff members. And so I think all that awareness is moving people where we want them to go. We're not having to push them or tell them what we want. They're figuring it out. So.
Anyone have comments or questions?
No, I was wondering, we were talking about the sharing of ideas. Is there any way on, maybe through the commissioner's memo or some other way, that we could provide a link to this presentation for districts all over the state to look at, to see the things you learned along the way and the steps that you've taken to get to where you are now? I think that would be invaluable if I were a less than 3-year principal, or if I were a 45-year principal. I just think that hearing other people who are on the ground, who are doing it, and something as simple as looking at your data of your students. Was that something that I see our computer guru in the back, and I think he could probably do a link to anything, but what's the best way to get this out, I was wondering.
Well, obviously inviting a principal and her team to the state board is a pretty high level way of getting that out, which I did on purpose. So you're right, we have to come up with better ways to get these stories of positive deviance out, because it's so easy to just get caught in the routine. Right. So they've gone beyond the routine and been very intentional about it. So there are a number of ways. Actually, Megan, this is her task, is to get these stories out through whatever means that it takes. So whether it's a website, whether it's meetings, whether it's showcases, and that's another thing that as we go into next year, for our ADE Summit, when we're bringing all of our individual conferences and having one big conference, a lot of the presentations and breakouts are going to be school teams telling their stories. So there'll be a heightened focus on, rather than, and we have adopted that just in general, rather than what we've done in the past as a department, which is go out and just tell everything, the same thing we've issued in commissioners' memos, or everything that we've already sent out in an email, or everything we've already sent out through, information from the standards unit. What we're really trying to do is become better communicators of the stories. All the information you need to be in compliance is on the website. And then there are people you can call. We don't need to go out as a department and be repeating all that information. We have to tell the stories of what's making a difference for kids. And So that's why I invited Ms. Dean, and she brought her team along, so you all could hear that at least at Park Avenue Elementary School in Stuttgart, they are using the tools we put out there in the way we would want them to do it, and they are setting and becoming a model for others to follow. Is that? And
Yeah,
then
I was
bringing
just-
that to
yeah.
a centralized location
Right.
through our communications team is part of that effort that will be.
I was just
taken on.
wondering in the memo, if you could say, you know, here's a link to a presentation that we were given, so it would alert them to something that is being done that's not coming from the board, from ADE or whoever, but this is people who are actually working with our children and making sense. And even the saying, hey, we discovered we weren't ready for RTI. Well, I mean, you know, that's an aha moment for a lot of people to say, oh, you mean there's steps before that? And working that, looking at the absenteeism of the students or the kids or the kind of homes they're doing, and eventually, you know, it'll massage in. It's probably a little long for a Fill You In Friday, but it would be if you could offer your memo or however y'all choose to do it, provide a link and blast it out to all the schools so they can see this, because if they are wanting to get better, they will take the initiative to look and listen. If they're not ready or don't know they need to get better, they may not, but that will help narrow that down for those of us when they go out to do support.
Can I add one more thing?
Of course. Yes.
One thing that was also helpful and fearful at the same time, kind of made you upset, was that when we were told we had to do the school improvement plan, it's like, okay, where is it? What? I mean, I was used to the accept, what was old, okay, we'll keep that, you know. And so it was like, okay, you create your school improvement plan. It's like, oh, what's that look like? So this is our school improvement plan. So anyway, that's made you step outside the box.
Yeah, and if I can just clarify one thing, is when we talk about that we weren't ready to look at RTI, it wasn't that we don't have an RTI process, because we do. It is that that's not where we need to start in improvement. And so I just want to clarify that. We do have it.
I just, a couple of things. It's exciting because it does tie so many different things together that we're talking about, and just even the data and the data being used in such a thoughtful way. But as you know, the most memorable, if not actually powerful stories, they tend to be parables, especially if it's something that you're trying to teach from. And one of the things I want to make sure that you take away is how lovely it is to hear your vulnerability. There's a lot of data and feedback available to all of us. What is increasingly unique are those that are able to take it and do something with it. And I think it does start with not rationalizing why things are hard or why they look like they do. It starts with being really honest with yourself, looking in the mirror and saying, okay, we're going to own this, all is all. And that's such a great story, and I just don't want to miss the point of how powerful your story is because of what you are willing to embrace. And while it'd be interesting to have a video or a story, don't underestimate the power of you telling your story just the way you are today, because that's when I think people really start to go, okay, I maybe need to be a little more self-aware here, self-reflective. So anyway, just wanted to tell you, I think that is such a great story. And one last thing, Commissioner, I don't know what the right way to do it is, but at some point, if we could, even within this building, this beautiful building, think about how we really start to lift up and celebrate outstanding teachers, outstanding students. In some businesses now, there's a business in Kansas City that runs, they have a wall, it's a screen that constantly shows new patent applications and things that are happening in that particular, it's a biomed business. But I think about our students, and they've become artists. There are a lot of ways to define success for our students and our teachers, but it keeps us all so mindful of what, at the end of the day, that's why we're here. And your story reminds me of, we've got to find ways to keep this so central to what we're doing here, because it's the best part of why we're here. So thank you for your story.
Thank you for allowing us to share it.
Ms. T?
I just want to say thank you for going the extra step and going the extra mile. So many times we look at information like the disciplinary numbers and the poverty, socioeconomic numbers, but we don't dig deeper to look at those individual children and what type of home they come from. And being a single mother of children, and being divorced, it's completely different. Coming from a home with two parents, and then going from that to having to run that household by yourself, and all of the challenges that come along with that. So thank you for digging deeper and giving those children a face so that people can see what their lives look like, so that you could see what their lives look like, so that you could better help them. And I'd be interested in hearing the story of the parents who had an opportunity to get a voice, and their perspective of going from perhaps not having a voice to having someone actually take the time and see their value and see the value of their input and empowering them to be more involved in their child's education. I'd love to see the results of that from the parents' perspective.
This is what I want to tell you about that. So y'all keep hold us accountable. You can call us anytime and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. But one of the things I said to our parents is that they're going to know that once we follow through with what we said we were going to do in that meeting in May. And they were like, that's exactly it. So we've got work to do this summer and already changed some things up. And so I'm just excited about the school year. Nervous about test scores, but it's not all about test scores. And y'all come to our school anytime. We're very proud of our school, so come anytime.
I just want to throw one more thing. I forgot to mention this. Speaking about looking at the socioeconomic demographics, over half of the people in poverty in Arkansas are single mothers of young children. So we cannot forget that when we talk about poverty, we talk about the poor, we are really needing to really focus on single mothers of young children. That's going to make up over half of the parents at schools.
Okay, I promise this is my last thing. I'm a product of a single parent. My mom had to work 3 jobs. I was involved in athletics, so I didn't need my mother to say, show me your grades, what's your homework? I wanted to do that so that I could be involved in athletics. So, being a product of that, my mom couldn't because she worked the 3 jobs to pay for those basketball shoes and the clothes and the different things. So that kind of broke my heart when I'm like, wait a minute, that's me. I need to help those kids. I can be a mentor to some of those too.
I'm also struck, it's obviously lots of things working together here, but I do, there is this kind of this role of the counselor, right, and the focusing of the energy in that person and the staffing decision there. Could you talk a little bit about how that decision was made to kind of add that counselor position and how that came to be?
We have approximately a little over 700, or under 700. Mm-hmm. I think this year we're going to be 685 or something like that. And so we had 1 full-time counselor and then 1 that floated between schools. So with 1 full-time and that number of students, that was hard to do, plus with the assignments of testing, hearing us say over and over that we needed an additional counselor, full-time counselor. Our district listened, and Dr. Gales made that position this year. Yes. Yeah, this was the first year for her, and she actually became certified in January. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and there's no single silver bullet to solving these issues, but I've been on a soapbox lately about our counselor ratio, and this feels like a case study of the importance of that well-trained person who can take that kind of make that individualized attention on students and have it immediately pay off. I think we, as a state, just have to rethink our commitment to
back-to-school counseling, especially in the earliest grades, where those counselors play such a role in terms of getting students on the right track for later on. So, anything else? All right. Thank you, Commissioner,
All right,
for
thank
bringing
you.
that to our attention.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Anything else?
That's it.
Awesome, great. Our last thing for the day is to take a look at our committees and appointments, and I'll start off with parental and family engagement.
Well, we had a meeting on Thursday, June 21st. We were sad to see that was Maria's last meeting with us. Gina Dickey was there as well, Megan and Kim. And that was the evening, or the afternoon after the Noble Impact Innovation Challenge. We were able to talk about the subcommittee Zoom meetings that we had during the month of June. I think we ended up having 4 for the subcommittees, and they went really well, had really good feedback. One of the things that came out of that was not adding an app, but adding a tab to, possibly adding a tab to the already existing ADE app concerning family and community engagement. We also talked about funding. Ms. Dickey went into the Winthrop Rockefeller funding that is actually pending. Ms. Wright said she sent a query to the Kellogg Foundation funding. And that, let's see. There was also an opportunity through the Public Education's Opportunity to Learn campaign. We're going to close out the Deeper Learning grant funding paperwork, and that role will be transferred to myself. There also may be some additional NASB funding. And one thing that I wanted to bring to the attention of the board concerning this area of the department that Ms. Wright and her team are taking care of it, that she is actually heading, is I know that the department is supporting her in as much as they possibly can, and I know they're finding different ways to support her as she goes forward on this endeavor that I don't think there's ever been. I think your position was the first one created for parental engagement, which I think is awesome that the department, thank you, Commissioner. I'm so glad that the department sees the sees the importance of needing someone to be on staff full-time to ensure that parents and the children are going to get the benefit of figuring out how to get families and communities engaged as much as possible. And I'd like to extend that to the board as well, for us to figure out what we can do as individuals in our individual spheres of influence of how we can help with funding, whatever way that we can support this, because it's growing and it's gotten a good foundation. We're planning on doing regional meetings. These regional meetings are going to take a lot of planning. I think the first one is going to be in Central. No. Well, I'm going to let you come up and speak about that, but because I don't have all the facts on that. But I just want to extend the invitation to all of us to be as much of a support to this really important part of making sure that we have individualized education for each child. And that parent part is so important, and that having them engaged. So I would love for everyone to just mull it over, think it over, what you can bring to the table to help us facilitate that as much as possible. Let's see. Unless I missed anything, I'm going to ask Ms. Wright and Ms. Abels if you want to kind of go into more detail of anything else that I might have missed.
Sound like a little kitty walking. Kim Wright, Director for Family and Community Engagement.
Megan Abels, Public Information Manager.
So I know you've heard many times today about the word excitement, and of course we are super excited about this whole process. And yes, thank you so much to the Commissioner for making this a major piece of Arkansas's ESSA plan is stakeholder communication. If we just look nationally, we can see the effects on communities that are broken, families that are broken, even in those communications with their schools that are broken. Over time, we've seen a decrease, and now it's come to the forefront that that has got to change. That has to change, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to unify communities with their schools and families, and that includes the districts and us. There is a shared responsibility from the state to the district, to the building level, to families, communities, and the students. And so that is our focus on creating the framework for family and community engagement, is making sure that this framework includes all of the responsible parties. Everyone needs to be able to look at what is that person, you know, if you were an educator and you looked at standards and you taught third grade, we were always told, look to see what the students in second grade were supposed to know and done in first grade, so that you knew where they were coming from, and then you should be looking at the grade above to see where you needed to take them. What did you need to prepare them for in leaving your grade level? Well, it's the same thing here, is that in the shared responsibility, we should be making sure that everyone knows what their role is. And so we couldn't be more excited about this opportunity for this framework. And as Ms. Dean mentioned, these regional meetings, even though through the external stakeholder network, which is a very large, over 175 people from across the state that include students, parents, community members, every kind of educator, you name it, or nonprofit, you name it, we have it on there. And that was they were very intentional about who we wanted to be on there, because we need all voices. To the coalition, who also is made up of those different diverse roles. But the regional meetings are going to be about those parents and communities, and about us going to them, not asking them to come to us for this information. And it's not just going to be a one-time. Our vision moving forward is that we'll hit different regions throughout the state, ongoing, moving forward, so that everyone has a voice and that we're coming to them. And we just see the importance of that two-way communication that we've already heard about today. It's a side-by-side partnership, not an us telling you or you just telling us and then we take it and do what we want with it. This is a side-by-side partnership from the ground up.
In fact, we had intended on going out and doing one big event in each region, and our people told us, no, you should do two while you're out. Do one in the morning, one in the evening. And so that's going to be a lot, y'all. That's 10 events that we're wanting to do, model for schools, how to do that on a low to no budget with partners. And so that's where we really want y'all to help us. Our goal is to have 200 people at each event. We want it to be big. We want people to come and hear about this work, hear what's coming for schools, model what this process should look like, so they can go back and then do it in their schools and in their communities, just how we're doing it around the state. It's a big deal. It's a lot.
And you all are we're also creating a toolkit that can be reproduced on a larger scale or a smaller scale, but something where they have all the tools they need to continue that in their own communities on whatever scale that they can.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on the toolkit, so as in a typical standard, if you were looking at a specific domain, and so let's just say the community domain, and then you might have standard 1A and it said whatever. Well, the toolkit will be aligned directly to the standard. So you can go to, if it was 1A standard that you were looking at, like you felt like that was an area you need to focus on, then when you go to the toolkit and go to 1A, there are going to be lots of strategies, resources, and ideas listed there for you to choose from, because not every community or school is made the same or needs the same thing. So there's going to be lots of information and strategies and things for you to look through and see what fits you right now. Because some things are going to be beginning stage type activities or strategies. Other things would be, we're a little bit further along than that. So we're looking for something deeper. So it's going to be very comprehensive. And that in particular, the toolkit will be a living, breathing document. That will be something that we will continuously can add to as we learn about more best practices and things that are going well in the state. Those action things that are going on in the state will add to the toolkit.
And please know that it will be research-based.
And our first regional meeting is set for September 18th in McGee. So are we going to have two separate?
Yes, we don't have those details yet.
Okay, all right, no problem. And our next meeting is set for immediately after this. So we'll be meeting again.
Great.
Thank
And
you.
we're excited to welcome Dr. Hill to our team.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Dr. Hill will be transitioning and joining our team as well. I know we'll be closing out the discipline task force, and he'll be transitioning on as well. Thank you.
And we also, and this is to transition forward, we got good news that the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation has shifted some money to allow Gina Dickey to stay involved
Awesome.
as a facilitator, and so that's great as
She's
well.
been a huge help to this process.
Yeah. So, great report. Thank you all so much for that. On the as the Task Force on Student Discipline, obviously we'll be hearing from them next month. On forward, in addition to the news from with the Rockefeller Foundation on Ms. Dickey, the implementation working group was met this morning. Obviously, I was not there because I was here, so I will have that complete report next month. Also note that it is time to start thinking about the next liaison to forward, and the commissioner and I have talked a little bit about that, and so expect news on that front as well. The ESSA steering committee, anything, Ms. Newton?
At first, glance, you'd say, well, no, there's nothing going on, but that's not true. That is absolutely not true. Right now, the schools are getting their data, and they're being encouraged to, look at the data just like you heard the schools are doing, and using that data to look at strategies they might employ. Well, the department is doing the same thing with the ESSA plan. It is ongoing evaluation, looking at what things are working, what needs to be improved, looking at the school quality and different indicators, which ones are working and which ones they're just working with all sorts of groups, working internally, looking at and constantly evaluating what they're doing. And right now, looking at the data on the schools, which schools are trending up, which schools can be used to highlight best practices in the state, which schools are maybe trending down that are going to need some extra support. So there's lots of work going on right now. And I asked Ms. Kaufman this morning if she ever had time to sleep. And she said she did. So anyway, they are working hard, and I think the focus right now is just on that continuous cycle of improvement, not just for schools, but for the totality of the plan itself. And Commissioner, you may have some specifics along that line that you want to add, but I'm very impressed. We are not standing still. We are moving forward.
Yeah. Just to add to that, when we talk about test scores, test results, ACT Aspire comes out, it's easy for us to get caught up on the accountability part of the ESSA plan, but that is a part. You know, there's so much more to the Arkansas ESSA plan than that, and much of what we've talked about today really fits well into the other components of that. It is I don't think we even correctly estimated the amount of communication that would be required to move the thinking from the old No Child Left Behind format and mindset to what we want to do under ESSA. And, you know, we still, just yesterday, I was reading an article about a school district in Arkansas, and that they had presented their Arkansas Comprehensive School Improvement Plan to their board and got it approved. And, you know, just because they still aren't there yet. And we know that it's going to take a while for everyone to get there. And that's where I'm very proud of groups like Stuttgart at Park Avenue. That principal didn't come in here and talk about what their letter grade was. She talked about what the things they were doing through their continuous cycle of inquiry to get better. That is the ESSA plan. That is so. While the activity of the steering committee is at a lull, the activity of the work is not. And so we, as I've mentioned before, we want to maintain this steering committee and the importance of it, so that when there are changes as they work on, you know, what are those next steps, that serves as the sounding board and kind of a advisory panel for us to make sure we aren't missing anything. But I can't say enough about the work that our teams are doing. Dr. Owa and that group working with raising the level of educator effectiveness, all the things that are happening, our information systems, that's part of our ESSA plan. You know, and you work that now with Dr. Saunders leaving and Arjit stepping in, continuing that, you know, making sure that nothing falls through the cracks there. It's just very much, when we talk about the systems and we've talked about, you know, changing our focus to a systems focus, that's really what this work surrounding ESSA is doing. And it's a slow process, but it's a vital process that we go through and make sure that everyone understands where we're headed. So we anticipate in the next few months updates from Battelle, the focus groups that Battelle for Kids are helping us with on communication and graphics and some of those things, where we can know what's meaningful to parents and community members versus and what's understandable to them versus what we get caught up in, either department or through education speak. We want it to be clear and meaningful to folks outside of the education world. So that work's ongoing, and we anticipate there'll be some things that'll come back in the form of a report. I'm not sure of a time frame. Deb, do you have a time frame on any feedback from Battelle? Survey? Okay, all right. Yeah, so probably nothing immediate, but just stay tuned.
Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Newton. Public school accountability, Ms. Hook?
Yes, for the benefit of the newer board members, public school accountability is basically a group of like federal programs, standards and system support, school performance, charter school. It's all of those.
Ms. Hook, your mic.
Sorry. It's all of those subgroups working with one big group. Deborah Kaufman, who has helped us out in many areas today, is over that. But she, like the commissioner, realized that silos don't work well if you're going to be a support team. So everybody sort of knows a little bit about what everyone else is doing, but you're ultimately responsible. And the things they've been involved with this month is federal programs part, are they're receiving public feedback that's completed they have completed the federal programs monitoring tool and submitted them to the U.S. Department of Education for review. The homeless conference is being held today and tomorrow at the Wyndham in North Little Rock. You may not realize that the homeless, our homeless children is a huge part of the people in public schools now, and receive needed extra attention because they change schools a lot. The standards and systems support, and you saw Mr. Cosby earlier a few times. The new rules for standards for accreditation went into effect July 1st of this year. The team is working on the standards for accreditation monitoring tool, and that tool will be posted for public review later this month and finalized before the start of school. On school performance, the team participated with the state school officers, it's called CCSSO, and Battelle for Kids, and conducting focus groups to receive feedback from shareholders regarding the accountability reports posted on My School Info. So you see how that is working with the community engagement stakeholders group across areas. The team goal is to provide parent-friendly reports. Ongoing feedback will be required to continue to improve the reports and communicate the progress of schools. The team is preparing for the July 31st, August 13th correction period for on the test, and this is one of the many steps in preparation for the ESSA School Index. So there again, all those things overlapping and leading up to the goal. And then the charter school office, which is newly under accountability, they are under there now, and they've joined the public school team, and the team is working to align school waivers with the new standards for accreditation. But I think the bottom line over all of this, and why Ms. Kaufman is the perfect person to lead this group, or at least stand in front so it looks like she's leading this group, is because we are thinking in terms totally at ADE of support. What can we do to support you? Here are the reports you need to do and everything, but this is to help us better understand the support that you need and what we can provide you to help you learn everything from what they were reporting this morning to any other minor detail, because I can assure you, having worked with administrators many years, that 700 administrators with less than 3 years experience, that's almost like an emergency. It's because it is such a learning curve, but I think getting in on the front end of ESSA will probably be helpful because they won't have any old learning that's getting in the way of their new learning. So I do commend the entire team, and they are, in fact, a team.
Thanks, Ms. Zook. Thanks, Ms. Kaufman. Next up, Human Resources. Ms. Chambers, anything new this month?
I just want to continue to applaud the Commissioner of the Department of Education as we talk about all the change that we're supporting in our communities and in our schools. To something you said earlier, Commissioner, we have to continue to look at ourselves at what we have to do differently and change within the department, within the board. And in that spirit, a lot of things are being looked at within the department organizationally, but also behaviorally, and how can they be even more effective in their performance. And Ms. Salas Ford is going to represent the Department of Education at a seminar, an institute, a 2-day seminar being put on in September. Walmart is doing it for its own management and then extending it to community leaders. And Courtney will represent us there. I'm really looking forward to what we'll learn from that. But I just think it's so important that we're continuing to lift our game here as we work collectively as a state. So thanks for doing that. And in fact, there's one other thing. There's another individual being made available to us that we'll be talking to soon. that has additional training available in the space of micro inequities and other things that might be useful to us. So we'll talk more about that.
And for new board members, these liaison roles are really, linkages between the board and key areas of the department. In this case, Ms. Chambers really bring her expertise regarding human resources to a variety of aspects about how to use our human capital most effectively at the department. And so she works with various folks, including Dr. Pfeffer and others at the department on that. Next up, for new folks, Arkansas is a member of the National Association of State Boards of Education. I would really strongly encourage you to join their, go ahead and sign up for their emails from NASB. Unfortunately, the New Member Institute took place in June, and so that's an annual event, so it will take place next June. You're eligible to go as a new member for the first 18 months, and so I would encourage you to do that. Our liaison to NASB is Ms. Newton.
We had a GAC call earlier this week,
And that's a Government Affairs Committee.
Sorry.
Right.
Anyway, they updated us on some of the things that are going on legislatively. Said that they thought there was some movement on this computer and technical education. One of the interesting things that they said about that, it kind of goes with some of the things we discussed this morning, that they thought that in the bill, when it finally came through, there would be an emphasis on the value of concurrent enrollment, getting students enrolled in what we've been trying to do with our early release for students enrolled in technical education and getting credit in that institution and also in the high school. And so they thought that there would be a emphasis on that when the final product came out. The main other thing that they talked about, and I talked to you about this last month, was the national level School Safety Commission meetings. I told you there would be 4, and they kind of dropped the ball on letting us know where they would be. There was one held in June in Kentucky, and she was supposed to send me the link to that meeting. I haven't gotten that yet, so I'll contact them and see if I can get that and share it with you. And said that there would be 2 more, one in western United States and one in the southern United States, and she didn't know the dates and locations, but maybe I can get that to you also, because I know that's something that, as a state, that we are very concerned about.
Great. Thanks. And just for your information, the annual meeting will take place in late October in Denver, and so if it works for your schedule, I can't remember the exact dates, we would obviously love for folks to be able to go, including new members, to that meeting. And then finally, we have Liaison of Special Education. Ms. Oak, anything this month?
I was just checking with the commissioner. As you know, Ms. Tyler was moved into a different position over special ed, and they have been searching for a person to head up that department. Do you have a progress report on that, or is it anything that can be public?
Yes, we have someone identified. I'm trying to text to find out if it's an announceable thing yet, so I don't know.
Okay.
But they have completed the interview process. I think an offer has been extended, but I would prefer to wait until I know for sure.
No,
and if I get a
problem.
response in the next few minutes, I will let you know.
And also, for the new members, I'll mention Miss Salas Ford and Mary Claire. Both are people who have knowledge of special ed, the special ed laws. They've worked in a variety of capacities, and so they are terrific resources for any and all questions with regard to that. I know I talked with Mary Claire this morning about in my opinion, there are some districts who could benefit from some building level training that the superintendent may or may not have recognized as needed for people conducting IEP conferences And because if you're a new teacher or you don't have or you have a new special ed supervisor or someone who's not real strong, then you're left out there, and there are a lot of things on a legal basis as well as a child basis that need to happen there, and often when they don't, then you get caught up in hearings, and it becomes a confrontational between the parents and the school, and often the kid will get lost in the process. So trying to think in terms of maybe some building level training that or encouraging the LEA supervisors to do that. Otherwise, we'll stay tuned and wait for the announcement of the new person.
Great. Okay. Anything else to come before us? All right. Congratulations to new folks who made it through their first meeting. And I will invite a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Dean, second by Ms. Chambers. All in favor say aye. All right. Thank you all.